Greetings, non-feminist men and women of the world. This is Monday, June 29, 2015. Welcome to episode number 54 of the Vanguard Report. Hey, feminists! Every non-feminist man or woman you meet is an individual. What a concept, eh? And you'd better get that concept in your head. Non-feminist people are individuals. Every single one that you will ever.
You're a little bit quiet, Fetal Bogan.
Oh, I hate it when this happens, folks. Bear with me, I'm having technical difficulties. I got to go into the sound settings on my computer, and I got to tweak a couple of things. All right, maybe that helps.
It does.
And maybe that helps. Okay. All right. Non-feminist people are individuals. Every single one that you will ever meet. And whenever you talk to a non-feminist person, man or woman, you are talking to that person alone and nobody else. You feminists had better kick that nasty habit of painting the non-feminist world with a broad brush of abstractification. Do not stick labels on people. Do not invent categories and shove people into them. Sorry, I should have said non-feminist people. Do not stick labels on non-feminist people. Do not invent categories and shove non-feminist people into those categories. You do that, and we will count it against you as feminist aggression. Labels are for putting on boxes. People are not boxes. And furthermore, most people do not live in boxes. Whether you like it or not, reality is complex. Reality is messy. I know that you feminists would like to shove all of your enemies into one big box, but I guarantee that this will fail. You've been doing it for half a century, and it's the main reason that you're in so much trouble now. And you are in trouble. Have you scanned the horizon with binoculars recently to see how many enemies are piling up there? People are getting tired of feminism. They really are. People are fed up with it. Fed up, I tell you. Keep doing what you're doing, and this will only get you into more trouble. Treat every non-feminist person you meet as an individual. You, feminists, are not a colonial administrator, and we are not the natives. In theory, you, feminists, are nothing more than a fellow citizen. Hence, you owe us the common measure of egalitarian courtesy befitting such a fact. Do not shove us into boxes. We do not take this kindly. So, this is episode number 54 of the Vanguard Report, the weekly program where we cut feminism no slack. I am Fetal Bogan, your host, and with me is my fellow host, Nick Redding, a man of Canada and a true son of the Alberta Prairie. Nick, say hello to the people.
Hey everybody, my name is Nick Redding, and I run a project called mensrightsedmonton.com. If you are in Edmonton, or if you know someone in Edmonton, or if you're going to be coming by through Edmonton and you sympathize with any of the viewpoints that are expressed on the Vanguard Report, you can you can come hang out with me, Nick Redding, if you drop me a line through our email address, mensrightsedmonton@gmail.com, or if you drop us a line through the Contact Us section of www.mensrightsedmonton.com.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Nick does great work up there in Edmonton. He is the counter-feminist Commissar General of Edmonton, I think is his title. So, you know what? Non-feminist people are a political class presently in the early stages of self-discovery. Nick, how is my audio quality coming through?
Super duper.
Super duper. Well, that's super duper. Non-feminist people are a political class presently in the early stages of self-discovery. Self-discovery is necessary if anything like fighting back is to be undertaken. Feminism imposed itself upon the world by means of a breathtakingly fraudulent presumption, and most of us were blissfully oblivious to this while it was happening. They snuck in gradually, under cover of darkness, you might say. It was only after the work was done and the cement was dry and the structure was bolted into place that we became aware of the massive swindle that had been played upon us. It is the proposal that non-feminist people fight back which now seems incongruous. It was necessary to program people's psychic structure to non-resistance on their own behalf, for obvious reasons, because non-feminist people make up at least 80% of the world's population. Now that's something. You don't want to get 80% of the world's population against you. Doesn't sound like a very wise plan. But yes, feminism became a problem to us. And the worst of it was that there was effectually, at the time, no us. But the political raison d'etre of all non-feminist groups formed around the problem of feminism, or the feminist problem as we call it, is that non-feminist people are a class. A rather new class in this world, but a class. Feminism established women as a class, and by implication made men into a class also. Feminism then proceeded to wage war against class male, recruiting as many members of class female into the fight as possible. But the consequences of the feminist war against men spread and spread, and they injure everybody. Everybody, not just men. So by the end of the day, the feminist war against men becomes a war against everybody. The feminists don't care about this, because if you are not a feminist, you are a person of no account in their book. They figure that the world is going to be feminist in the long run, and if you get in the way of that plan, even passively, then you are on the wrong side of history, according to them, and it is no matter if history runs you over. So that is why you ought to be worried about the feminist war against men, because it is a war against you too. Not because it is damaging men, although it certainly is, but because it is damaging you. And it is damaging the world that you must live in alongside of everybody else. We all have a stake in this thing. We all have a dog in this fight. Well, if we're not feminist. So what goes around comes around, and in the long run, whatever poisons half of the human race poisons everybody, poisons the whole tamale. So now, do you see why non-feminist people are a political class? It's because they are a group with common interests, engaged in a power struggle with another group which has, well, shoved them into a box. That's quite a grouping device there, isn't it, to be shoved into a box? Welcome to the club. More and more non-feminist people are waking up to this unpleasant reality, so you are in good company. And the pardon me, and the really good news is that you are not part of any quote-unquote moral collective. Non-feminist people are just a cross-section of the human race, a fully representative sample of the world's moral variety. But they are not, please note this well, they are not a moral collective, or a moral Borg, if you want to put it that way, and they cannot be collectively guilty for anything. There's no guilt by association for being part of 80% of the human race. There's no guilt by association for not being a feminist. You're not responsible for what some other person does who is also not a feminist. Okay, that's pretty basic, and that's a concept that needs to be put on the table. It needs to be put in the public square. Totally. The one important marker which distinguishes non-feminist people from feminist people is their simple non-adherence to feminism, or better yet, that they are willing to stand up and audibly say, I am not a feminist. I am not a feminist. It's the simple power of saying no. It's a simple power, but it is an awesome power. And finally, non-feminist people are distinguished from feminist people by the simple fact that they, non-feminist people, are not dedicated to driving a wedge down the middle of the human race. That is, unlike the feminists, they are not dedicated to turning women into a political class. Because, you know, once you turn women into a political class, you have effectively turned men into a political class as well, even if men are slow to catch on to that. So you have divided the world down the middle into two separate political classes who have a conflict of interest with each other eternally. That is what feminism has brought us. But the feminists are, however, turning themselves into a political class. And I'm helping them. Feminism is turning itself into a political class. By so doing, they are turning, whoa, pardon me, I got mixed up there. They are, however, turning themselves into a political class, and by themselves, I mean us. We, non-feminists, we're turning ourselves into a political class because we are in the process of self-discovery. We are learning that we are a we. We are going from a state of political nothing to a state of political something. That's the big transition that we need to make. And by so doing, we are turning feminists as well into a political class. That is the binary which matters, and the dialectic which matters. Feminist versus not feminist. Men's rights and all of that, well, that comes later. That's the toppings on the pizza. But first, we got to lay down the dough. The confrontation which comes first of all is the confrontation of feminist against non-feminist. We are all on one side of that conflict or the other. There is no middle ground. So pick a side. Okay? By the way, I am not a feminist. Nick, what do you have to say there?
I am also not a feminist.
Oh, yes, Nick. Yes, Nick, you're right on it there. You are not a feminist. I am not a feminist. Nick and I are not a feminist. James is hanging out in the background. He's a little man behind the curtain. I think he would also be glad to say that he is not a feminist. Well, I'm pretty sure he
I'm
would
not
say
a
that.
feminist. Nope, not a feminist.
You're not a feminist. I'm not a feminist. Nick is not a feminist. You know, so far that makes three of us. But I think we can keep rolling with that. It's just that we don't have anybody in reach right at this minute. But there's a lot of us out there, okay? And we are a political class because, well, history has made us one. And history, in this case, has a lot to do with feminism. And feminism and feminists have very effectively, through their actions, begun to convert the rest of the world outside of feminism into a political class. So everybody pick a side. Now, cue number 1. This is a web link to an article that was recently posted on A Voice for Men. This is a story about something rather amazing, I think, that happened in Sweden recently. Let's just pull that up. Here we go. Leading Swedish feminist admits domestic violence is not a gender issue. Wow. Let that sink in. To prove that I'm not the only one who finds this impressive, I see that this article at AVFM has gotten 237 comments. Now, this article was written by a Swedish woman, one Eva Solberg. It was translated from Swedish into English by Lucian Valsan, our expert on all things European. Lucian translated this from Swedish into English. And let me read it. Well, before I read it, just let me tell you what we have happening here. We have a feminist basically betraying feminism, because any quote-unquote feminist who comes out and says that domestic violence is not a gendered issue, boy, if that ain't the Benedict Arnold of feminism, I don't know what to say. Translator's note. This would be Lucian Valsan talking here. Translator's note. For decades, even the hint that women may actually be responsible sometimes for domestic violence was taboo. The wind of change now blows full force in Sweden as a leading feminist takes it to a public forum to break the taboo and propose solutions. We are bringing her article here to AVFM, an article which has over, listen to this, an article which has over 80% approval rate on the original platform. That means the people in Sweden who were reading her article in Swedish, 80% of them gave it a thumbs up. The times they are changing. You're getting that kind of response in Sweden. I mean, that is interesting. That is significant. So getting into the article. Domestic violence is not a gender issue. Intimate partner violence is not a gender issue. It is time for family peace. In the last few days, the results of the government investigation of IPV have been presented to me by the responsible minister. After reading them, I am compelled by reality to present a disapproving note to both the investigators and the government, who still seem to be of the view that sexism is the solution to the problem of domestic violence. And by sexism, I think she means the idea that domestic violence is, as feminists say, gendered. It's something that is committed overwhelmingly by men against women. 95% seems to be the figure that they favor. In other words, 95% of all domestic violence is initiated or perpetrated by men, and only 5% by women. And what's also interesting here is the reason why these 95% of men allegedly perpetrate domestic violence, and that is that they are doing it to assert their patriarchal power and control over women. That's what they're thinking about. They're upholding the patriarchy. Nothing personal going on there. It's just all political. Okay. The tone and the division was already defined right from the title. The National Strategy to Combat Men's Violence Against Women. Doesn't that make you madder than hell when you hear things like that? Men's violence against women. Yeah. The narrative that's rolled up in that little sentence there, what is implied by that sentence, men's violence against women. Sneaky, isn't it? But we're getting wise to their tricks. Little by little, we're getting wise to their tricks. The National Strategy to Combat Men's Violence Against Women, inferring that we have a guilty sex and an innocent sex. But thanks to extensive research in the field, both at the national and international level, we now know with great certainty that this breakdown by sex is simply not true. Well, we now know it, and we have known it for nigh on to 1/3 of a century. We also know through extensive practice and experience that the attempts to solve the issue through this kind of analysis have failed. And they failed precisely because violence is not and never has been a gendered issue. In Sweden, however, even the slightest questioning of the current model has been regarded as swearing in an otherwise quiet and echoing church. Few are those who have dared to openly question the current model, but it is about time to start doing so. Sweden is, or in any case, should in any case strive to be a knowledgeable society. This society is characterized above all by its willingness to be guided by free and politically independent research when it comes to making decisions affecting all of us. As such, careful analysis and lessons of accumulated experience ought to be an important criterion in decision making. The efforts conducted so far aiming to end IPV have not been working. I guess she means that the IPV has been going on as always. This is also acknowledged by the government. The reason for this should obviously be analyzed carefully. And whatever the reasons for analyzing, we can be sure of one thing. The road to a solution for this social problem is hardly to stubbornly continue to feed the patient with more of the same medicine that has already been tried unsuccessfully for decades. It is time to raise the bar. The available knowledge out there is not lacking in substance. In what has come to be known as the Partner Abuse State of Knowledge Project, which is the world's largest research database on IPV, no less than 1,700 scientific papers on the topic are summarized. Virtually all differ in their conclusions from the tired gendered analysis that the government has once again introduced. Yeah, the Partner Abuse State of Knowledge, that's the atom bomb that was dropped on the feminist narrative. I think that's how we will see it in the long view of history. When such a considerable amount of research is evaluated, some clear and interesting patterns emerge. One such pattern is that violence in the family, rather than being gender-bound, appears rather be an inherited generational problem. To know this and then continue to ignore the damage done to the children who are today subjected to violence is a huge social betrayal. We condemn these children thus to repeat the patterns they've learned from their parents, and by doing so, we ultimately condemn our society to continue to perpetuate the problem with enormous cost in both money and personal suffering. And well, Aaron Pitsey found out about this years ago. And here is something in Swedish that I cannot pronounce. Enskede Avsta, moderates. I believe that is the moderate women, where I am the chairwoman of the Opposition Alliance in the district has taken a clear and continuing responsibility to prioritize the work on domestic violence in the direction of prevention. Prevention. See? The feminist approach was not one of prevention. It was one of swooping in after the fact and convicting as many men of domestic violence as they could. Their idea of fixing the problem was to handcuff men and haul them away. That's feminism for you. In our efforts, we prioritize the methods to be more legally secure. We are also the first district of Stockholm to have introduced the anti-DV program, FRIDSAM, Swedish acronym there, FRIDSAM, combined with treating both men and women. By doing so, we have demonstrated the importance of seeing the big picture when violence occurs in families. Excuse me, Nick, can you keep people talking, or can you talk a bit for like about 1 minute? Because
Well, yeah, okay, so yeah, go ahead. So, I mean, from what I can tell here, I'm operating on anti-feminist biases, to be certain. Oh, and we can hear Feedlemogan talking with his roommate. But what I would assume from this is that when they're talking about dealing with both men and women, they're talking about dealing with men as perpetrators and women as victims, and that's their idea of a holistic approach. I really hope I'm wrong about this, but it would be very consistent with what we've seen in regards to the to all DV, IPV programming across the board for the last couple of years. Sorry, folks, I was kind of put on the spot here.
Hello, I'm back.
Hey, Feedlemogan, thank God.
I will be curious to hear what you said when I listened to the thing.
Well, I was just to catch up. I was just commenting on I thought that if an organization such as this was saying that they were dealing with the whole spectrum by dealing with men and women, it's my assumption that they were dealing with men as perpetrators and women as victims right out of the chute. Am I wrong about that?
Okay, you're saying that this organization that's talking here.
I'm saying it's my assumption that when they talk about dealing with men and women, I'm assuming that they're dealing with men as perpetrators and women as victims.
Well, that has been the classic model that feminism has used for years and years. What I gather from reading this article is that there is a movement to do away with that, which is precisely why this is big news.
Sorry, I should have been listening harder. I had other stuff I was dealing with. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well, this is big news precisely because when you get a feminist, and I'm going to assume that this woman, Eva Solberg, is some flavor of feminist. I mean, in a country like Sweden, you're pretty much feminist by a kind of default setting. But to have her step up and make a statement like this, I mean, this is as if the Pope stepped out on the balcony over St. Peter's Square in Rome and turned on the microphone and said, "Folks, you know, forget about the concept of original sin. There's no such thing. Oh, and the Mass, I don't celebrate the Mass. You don't have to celebrate the Mass anymore. Forget about it." Okay? I mean, can you imagine? So, I mean, it's just...
Well, I doubt this woman is any kind of feminist pope. I mean, come on.
Well, I'm not saying she is a feminist pope, quote unquote, but the enormity of such a thing to come out and say that. I mean, this is a bombshell.
Fair enough.
Yes, I mean, this statement is unprecedented. This is a politician of some rank, a woman politician, I guess reportedly a feminist, because this organization she belongs to, I am told, by none other than Lucien Valsan himself, who is our expert on things European, that this is a feminist group, a feminist party, feminist organization, or what you will. It's a sign that the times, they are changing. Let's see. We had hoped that our unique approach would be spread to more locations, but unfortunately this has not yet been the case. I hope that's where I left off. Another aim of ours was to provide better care for children and to increase the quality of the social services. This, however, never got fully implemented. Very often, I, as a politician, talk with parents who don't get to meet their children. I have also heard many children talking about how they witnessed major vulnerabilities in the processes that are intended to protect them. This is, of course, completely unacceptable. I am also deeply concerned with the one-sided focus on men being seen as only as perpetrators in cases involving domestic abuse. I have met and spoken with many fathers and children who have witnessed and experienced a very different reality. The research also provides evidence that there are stories that, yes, women also use violence within families. Both the partners and the children can be victims. If we view women only as victims, doesn't this set up these men and their children to be in a disadvantaged position? If we as women do not stand up for these men, who then will do it? Any form of violence is illegal and must be combated. Therefore, as the chairwoman of the Women of the Moderate Party in Stockholm, that's the organization or party or whatever you call it, that she is, I guess, in charge of, or a member of, a leading member of, the Women of the Moderate Party, I intend to initiate a process where we meet with and listen to all of those who in any way have experience with domestic violence. Okay, Women of the Moderate Party, and so we can, differ in our opinions as to whether this Eva Solberg is a feminist, quote unquote, but being a woman in Sweden involved in politics, she is to that extent a feminist by definition, I guess you would say. And if you asked her, are you a feminist, she might say she was a feminist. She's reminding me quite a bit of Christina Hoff Sommers, however. Nick, I think we maybe got a new member in the Unicorn Feminist Club here.
That's a category that has to be very strictly vetted.
Okay, well,
a unicorn by their nature are so rare and beautiful that by all rights they shouldn't exist. So I'm very very hesitant to.
We will put Eva Solberg on our candidate list at any rate.
Perhaps.
Further vetting is warranted, of course. Therefore, as the chairwoman of the Women of the Moderate Party in Stockholm, I intend to, Stockholm, so maybe she's got some kind of Stockholm syndrome there going on with the patriarchy. Sorry, I had to shoehorn that in there. I couldn't resist. In Stockholm, I intend to initiate a process where we meet with and listen to all of those who in any way have experience with domestic violence. I also welcome the representatives of the authorities, such as social workers, police officers, and others, to contact us and bring their experiences into the discussion as well. And above all, I want to see those exposed to or subjected to unjust legal sanctions that hit the children due to misuse of authority, prejudice, ideological tunneled vision, or whatever the cause might be. This, of course, applies to both men and women. All throughout this statement, her language is pretty clear. I mean, she is breaking with feminist orthodoxy in a radical way. And I'm sure she knows it. I'm sure she does. She doesn't strike me as stupid. Without more transparency and openness regarding the vulnerability of those who are otherwise entitled to a protective family life which has been threatened or destroyed, we will never manage to create a better society. We now learn from the National Public Health Institute that the risk of suffering from mental illness, substance abuse, and other conditions that lead to social vulnerability is twice as high for children who are deprived of one or both of their parents. We also know that every day children are being taken away by one of their parents, both within Sweden and from Sweden to abroad, and the distrust of the parents toward the responsible authorities is growing at an alarming rate. We have to start daring to see and talk. Wait a minute. The distrust of the parents toward the responsible authorities is growing at an alarming rate. And I think that 80% thumbs up rating that the article got from the Swedish reading public could attest to that. Okay, we have to start daring to see and talk about this difficult and complicated problem. And we must begin to recognize the fact that domestic violence, in at least half of its occurrence, is carried out by female perpetrators. There you go. There's no wiggle room to get around that one. Domestic violence, in at least half of its occurrence, is carried out by female perpetrators. Bingo! What we've known for years.
Oh, the Canadian court system can get around that easily, like they did with Karla Homolka. Yeah, you know, she may have, you know, drugged her little sister, and then sexually abused her, and then the drugs that she used on her ended up killing her, and then she went around helping her husband abduct and sexually torture a series of young women. But she got a pretty sweet deal, and now she's back out in the world with a husband and a baby because, you know, I mean, yeah, she was the perpetrator, but someone else was really responsible, namely her husband, Paul Bernardo.
You know, that's not the only case that I've heard of a woman literally or almost literally getting away with murder. Okay. I mean, this is a pattern. This happens. Now, a feminist might step in here and say, well, what's that got to do with feminism? It has something to do with feminism. You know, feminism, which does everything in its power to propagate the idea of man bad and woman good, well, this knocks a hole in the feminist narrative. Every time some woman does something horrendously bad, and not only doesn't get called out for it by the feminists themselves, but gets let off by the justice system, I mean, that makes the feminists look terrible, and it knocks a hole in patriarchy theory. Patriarchy theory. By the way, I was just reading, I think yesterday, that the phrase patriarchy theory is not a phrase that feminists themselves use. Okay? They say feminist theory. Feminists do not use the phrase patriarchy theory. It's just non-feminists and anti-feminists who say the phrase patriarchy theory. So I guess the message that we're getting from the feminists on that one is that we cannot use the phrase patriarchy theory. It's bad, and we must drop that phrase from our language. It's not a legitimate phrase. Well, I think it's a legitimate phrase. I mean, do feminists theorize on the subject of patriarchy, or do they not?
Yeah, just because somebody tells me that it's not exciting, whatever. I mean, we're
yeah, whatever. That's a good response, Nick. Whatever.
We will continue to use the phrase patriarchy theory. What do you want? I mean, I don't. Yeah, that's it. It's yeah.
And they can, well, they can suck it up. Yeah. Patriarchy theory. Okay. We must begin to recognize the fact that domestic violence, in at least half of its occurrence, is carried out by female perpetrators. Otherwise, our efforts to protect the most vulnerable among us, the children, will never become more than just an aspiration. We will continue to fail in the attempt to help families break the destructive pattern. Yeah, more feminism will just make the destructive pattern worse. Anybody can see that. Let us now stand together, not divided by sex, and help each other with the work to now, once and for all, commence to break the destructive patterns wherever they occur. Do you want to help us with that? Yes, I do want to help you with that. And we're going to start breaking the destructive pattern by breaking feminism itself. Eva Solberg doesn't go quite that far. I'm sure she would not say that. So that's why I am here to say that for her. We break the destructive pattern by breaking the source and the root of that pattern, which is feminism. Well, no, feminism is not the source and root of the pattern. I mean, domestic violence is a thing on its own. It happens independently of feminism. It's just that feminism jumps in there and makes it worse.
Feminism is a very nebulous term, but you're not going to find, you're going to be hard pressed. I won't say you won't, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a feminist who looks at female violence, like female perpetrated violence, in a way that is not ultimately the responsibility of somebody else. And that goes directly counter to our understanding of criminal law in Western society, wherein if someone is an adult with full mental and physical capacities, then they are responsible for their actions. Feminists try to have it, typically, feminists try to have it both ways, in such that women are full adults, if not more than that, and at the same time somehow not. They are simply powerless when someone else has an agenda that involves them being a terrible, terrible criminal.
Well, by the end of the day, the feminist agenda is to do anything they can to empower women, preferably at the expense of men. Okay. All right. So something like this coming out of Sweden, as I said, it's a bombshell. It's big. Heaven help Eva Solberg. I think her life is going to get complicated. Of course, somehow I think she knew what she was getting into. She strikes me as a smart person. I think she calculated her risks, and I'm going to trust that she knows what she's doing. But this pulls the cork out of the bottle and lets the genie out of the bottle. Now that a statement like this has been, now that it's been said, and it's gotten out into the public square, at least in Sweden, it's gotten out into the public square. You know it's in the Swedish public square. It's said, it's not going to be unsaid. It's going to be echoing and reverberating in the collective brain, and it's not going to go away. It's part of the conversation now.
I don't have 1 inch of the faith that you do.
Well, okay. So color me naive. Paint me naive then.
You say that now that she's come out and said this, it's just going to be, it's going to be this giant landmark event. But you know as well as I do that feminists have a tremendous capacity for throwing inconvenient truths down the memory hole, and they'll do it right in front of you.
A tremendous capacity, but is it infinite? This capacity?
Yes, because they're at no point do
I don't mean are they going to stop, but I mean is there a point beyond which it no longer serves them and they can't make it work, except in their own minds?
Well, you kind of answered your own question there. Like, I am firmly of the belief that these people are severely psychologically infirm.
Also not.
And it could be as devastating as the scenario you gave earlier about the Pope coming out and saying that Mass and the Eucharist or whatever, any other number of sacred dogmas are just no longer important. But if that happened, I have enough faith in Catholics to actually at least acknowledge, if they won't abide by this new tradition, to at least acknowledge that it was said. I don't extend that same trust to feminists.
To feminists. I don't extend that trust to feminists either, Nick.
In fact, I trust them to do absolutely everything they can to prevent that message from getting out, and then if they can't do that, they will, among themselves, spread a message that it was never said, and that if you ever bring it up, they'll say, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Well, yeah, you're right, Nick. You're right. That is what feminists do. I mean, we know how they operate. But the real question here is the middle mass. What about the middle mass?
Well, again, that comes down to a certain section of them will have been reached. They have been. And they'll start talking about it, and they'll start coming into contact with the activated non-feminist sector. However, the nature of the middle mass is that most of them they don't care, or they're willing to go along with it on a very superficial level. So when you come, which is why when you come to them with a news story that MRAs are boycotting Mad Max, they'll all go along with it, and then when you show them evidence that that's not true, then they'll say, well, no one can tell the difference between an MRA and a PUA, so fuck you. And they do that mostly because they...
Due to ignorance and apathy.
Yeah, exactly. The middle mass... they either don't care, and even if they're made aware of all the facts, they have shit to do. And they.
But the nature you should have more faith in the middle mass than that. The nature of the middle mass is that they can be reached and they are malleable, and at some point in time they will polarize, and one portion will drift toward the feminist side, the other portion will drift toward the non-feminist side.
Oh yeah, eventually. Yes.
And it's a step-by-step process, and here is another stage along the road.
Exactly.
What happened in Sweden?
It's one more step. It's one more person standing up, even if she self-identifies as a feminist, even if she believes in patriarchy theory, she's taking a critical element of the feminist narrative and calling bullshit in front of the whole goddamn world.
Critical, Nick, you realize how critical this woman is? You realize how critical?
I do.
It's like the four-legged table now has three legs.
No, it's not.
Or maybe she just chopped off half of one of the legs, and now the table has a terrible tilt to it. I don't know, but we're talking some serious structural damage here.
We're talking about the potential for serious structural damage.
Well, of course, potential. This is a gift that's going to keep on giving.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I just, I hope I'm wrong. I don't see it as optimistically as you do.
And the fact that 80% of the people...
That is very promising. You're right.
Of course it is. I'm factoring in all of this all at once, Nick, and I don't always talk through all of the steps that I go through in my mind, because sometimes I think a lot faster than I talk. And I say a lot less than I think, because I haven't got enough words and enough time to say everything that I'm thinking.
Well,
there's a necessary abbreviation involved, a shorthand.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I like to say that domestic violence, the whole issue of domestic violence, and the patriarchal power and control narrative, the application of patriarchy theory to the field of intimate partner violence, is I think, if there is the one main crown jewel in feminism's anti-male talking points, there you go. That's it. This is so big. There's nothing more radical, more fundamental than dropping a stink bomb in the middle of hearth and home by saying that men are violent control freaks beating up on women. I mean, if somebody wanted to destroy marriage and destroy the family institution and separate men from women, boy, I'll tell you what, I couldn't think of a better way to do it than that. And to put out that kind of propaganda, which is just what they've been doing for a third of a century now. But I mean, we've seen signs for quite a while that this may be coming to an end, and the signs just keep getting bigger and bigger. So let's keep an eye on this, and let's be cautiously optimistic. And personally, I think we haven't heard the last of this. I think we'll hear more of this, and I think we'll hear more things in a similar vein to this coming from other people. Let's certainly hope so. All right. Nick, can I ask you, how is my audio volume doing?
It's doing great, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, let's move along to cue number 2. Mother incarcerated after forcing daughter to falsely accuse father of sexual abuse. Well, this certainly harkens back to the subject of domestic violence, doesn't it?
And the changing of the narrative. I got to say, thank God. Thank God someone is being punished for doing something so goddamn despicable.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, that's justice. So, let's pull this up in the browser. Mother incarcerated after forcing daughter to falsely accuse father of sexual abuse. Chicago, June 25, 2015, PR Newswire. Litigators Leslie P. Poole and Misty I. Gamino from the law offices of Jeffrey M. Leving won an important victory in Chicago and finally brought justice to a father by persuading the judge to incarcerate his ex-wife for violating an order prohibiting her to contact her daughter, and for owing over $50,000 in past due child support. She sounds like one bad mama. This occurred after the mother brainwashed, that's what it says, after the mother brainwashed her daughter to make false allegations of sexual abuse against her own father. Sexual abuse, could that be rape? Sexual assault, who knows?
Well, have you seen the footage of the disgraced psychiatrist trying to convince a 2 or 3-year-old girl that her father had sexually abused her?
Is it connected with this story? If
No.
so, I have no.
No, it's not. No, there's footage. There was a woman. She was a psychologist. And, I saw footage of her talking with a toddler, and juxtaposed with footage of this same woman in court answering for the horrible things she had said. She had this little girl, and she was saying, do you remember when you told me that your daddy put his pee-pee in your mouth? She goes, no. Your little girl's response to this is perfectly natural. She goes, no. She goes, oh, okay, so now you're telling me it didn't happen. Okay. Like it was just obvious pressure. Obvious
For
gaslighting.
the little girl to say what she wanted the little girl to say.
Yeah, it was obvious gaslighting, right? I mean, and it's pathetic that someone clinically trained.
According to feminist theory, gaslighting is something that men do to women.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are men who do it to women.
I'm sure there are too.
But if I know anything about feminists, which I think I do, they would equate gaslighting to any time you simply do not believe them. There's a difference between not believing someone and telling them that what they think happened didn't happen. No, this. I mean, what was particularly pathetic about this was that someone with a formal education in psychology was wasn't able to persuade a toddler to go along with her plan. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it just what you said to me there about a woman, trying coaching her daughter to brainwashing her daughter to implicate her father in such terrible crimes it immediately reminded me of that particular video. If anybody in the chat room knows about that, can you throw it up for me, please? Thanks.
Well, this ties together the rape narrative with the domestic violence narrative, okay, which makes this an interesting case. So, anyways, we have a mother who was pressuring her daughter to accuse the father of sexual abuse. This is just another twist on lying about rape, and lying about rape can happen in so many different contexts. The father was granted residential custody of their daughter in his divorce. In an attempt to gain leverage in her pursuit to change custody and terminate her child support obligations, the ex-wife forced their daughter to make false allegations of sexual and physical abuse against her father to the Department of Children and Family Services. A woman forced her daughter to make false allegations of sexual abuse against a man, the father. Okay? This is lying in the context of divorce to gain an advantage. And it also fits into the lying about rape thing. I mean, what a tangled web we weave. The ex-wife's malicious attempt to interfere with the father's relationship with his daughter failed when he turned to the law offices of Jeffrey M. Leving to fight these serious and unfounded accusations. The father faced wrongful incarceration and almost lost his relationship with his daughter, said internationally renowned father's rights attorney Jeffrey M. Leving. Yeah, those father's rights attorneys, they are around. Look around, they're out there. I've heard some advertised locally around Seattle as well.
Yeah, we should give this guy some publicity, actually, this lawyer.
Well, we're doing it right now in a small way. The Leving team fought vigorously to prove the allegations against the father were false. The mother's manipulation of her daughter led the judge to enter an order prohibiting her from contact with her daughter. So the judge saw right through it. Not all judges are corrupt rat bastards. There's a few good ones out there. Thank heavens. Even after this order was entered, the mother continued to contact her daughter to convince her to make additional false allegations. A woman pressuring another woman to lie about rape. If women don't lie about rape, well, we have women pressuring women to lie about rape. I mean, the plot just gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Given the danger and harm the mother had already caused this family, the judge jailed the mother for her continued disregard of the no-contact order and for her failure to pay child support in an amount in excess of $50,000. This was a deadbeat mom. Funny that the term deadbeat mom is not part of the common vocabulary, but deadbeat dad is. The child, see what I mean about anti-male bias and misandry? The child is now safe with her father, and he is now able to live without the fear of being incarcerated based on false accusations. This is an accredited example of the importance of responsible fatherhood and the rights of a child. I feel a little bit queasy about that phrase, the importance of responsible fatherhood. It seems to imply that maybe there is a problem with fathers being responsible or something.
But there is.
I mean, I granted there are irresponsible fathers, but
there is an importance on being a responsible father. I don't know. I think you might just be being oversensitive there.
Maybe I am. But in this line of work, you get that way pretty fast. But let me tell you. When you see the kind of stuff that we see all the time, yeah. You get triggered pretty easy. Pardon me, I had to say that. For more information, please contact Jennifer Whiteside at phone number. And you can read that. If you want to contact Jennifer Whiteside for any reason, well, there you go. There's her phone number. Source, Law Offices of Jeffrey M. Leving, Limited. Well, that was a very interesting story. And it was another hammer and chisel blow to feminism, to the wall of feminism, taking a nice little chunk out of that wall. Is the collapse of feminism going to come about suddenly and dramatically like the fall of the Iron Curtain at the end of the Cold War, I wonder?
Yeah, I think about that a lot too. Is it just going to... Is it just going to be an element of the culture that we have to keep at bay, or is it going to be once we pull out is it going to be like a situation where we just pull out the nucleus and the whole structure just falls apart? I mean, a lot of it is quite deeply ingrained, and I don't just mean traditional gynocentrism. I mean feminist theory.
Structure. The power structure, yes.
The dogma.
Their long march through the institutions. And now we have the social justice warriors following up, mopping up by going into the smaller and smaller cultural sectors.
Yeah.
Gamergate, and now I hear that Metalgate is becoming a thing again.
Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see how far that goes.
There's metal music. Like if you listen to System of a Down, those guys seem pretty social justice-y to me. I mean, yeah. I first heard them when social justice was getting big on the scene back in like the early 2000s. So.
Well, I mean, the same general remarks could apply to Gamergate. The charges against computer gaming were completely false. I mean, there were strong female role models in games, and have been for years. It's completely a load of bollocks. And the same with metal. And, well, apparently, someone's trying to crack open the walnut of the heavy metal scene. And we talked about it here a few months ago, and recently we see more stirrings. It's just something to keep an eye on. They're not going to get far. They're not going to get far with the metal community. Thank heavens. But that is their pattern nowadays, going and invading small cultural communities, as they've already effectively taken over the institutions, and now they're just drilling down into smaller and smaller spaces, so that their domination of the cultural fabric will be complete and thoroughly saturated. Okay, what was I talking about before I started talking about this? I don't know. Let's go on. We got something else to look at here. Yes. The following, what I'm about to share with you, cue number 3, the following is an official document of the FemSoc, or Feminist Society. Nick, I know you like that name, FemSoc. Does that sound Orwellian?
Sounds like IngSoc.
It does. It does. Sounds Orwellian anyway. FemSoc. The following is an official document of the FemSoc, or, by the way, folks, Nick is a great connoisseur, a great fan of 1984. That's his Bible in many ways. The following is an official document of the FemSoc, or Feminist Society, a feminist student group at the University of Durham and various other universities around England. Now, some of you may have heard of a young man by the name of Adam Frost, who tried to start a men's issue society at the University of Durham. Okay, and that word Durham, a note upon that word Durham, not to be confused with Durham, North Carolina, which is a location of Duke University, of Duke lacrosse fame. The confluence of those two words is kind of cool there. But no, this is Durham, University of Durham in, I would assume, Durham, England, the original Durham. And anyway, Adam Frost was a student, a language student at Durham University in England, trying to start a male Issues Society, I think he called it, and he was turned down, mainly turned down by the FemSoc, or Feminist Society. And anyway, just to give you a little bit of a picture of this FemSoc, I'm going to read something to you here. And this is cue number 3, so you can go read it yourself at your leisure. This is the FemSoc Code of Conduct for Men in Feminist Spaces. Okay, let's savor every drop of this soup. Feminism can mean a lot of different things in different contexts, and there is a lot of discussion within feminism about what the true cause of women's oppression are and how to best go about changing that. FemSoc exists as a space that aims to offer a platform for various feminist ideas. However, it is essential to keep to certain core things that are non-negotiable. Okay? Here is the non-negotiable core stuff. Feminism is the movement of women's liberation from male oppression and the patriarchy. And feminism exists to make up for what the larger society is denying women, such as respect, personal freedom, equal pay, equal rights, etc. That is a very nebulous list of things there, all virtually meaningless except for equal pay, which is a little bit meaningful but not much better. With this in mind, we aim to ensure that FemSoc prioritizes the experience, voices, needs, and wishes of women. Our core aims as a group are to, got a little grammar issue there. Our core aims as a group is to serve as a platform for creating cultural change by organizing discussion groups, campaigning, etc. Offer our members an alternative environment free from misogyny within our discussion spaces, our club nights, and special subgroup settings such as the Book and Film Club. Offer support and encouragement to our women members by providing safe, confidential, women-only spaces. Based on this, we are not an exclusively women-only group, but FemSoc will host occasional women-only events. These can take the form of discussion groups, socials, etc. The event description in the FemSoc emails and on our Facebook page will always state whether an event is women-only or open to all, so we can ensure that there are no misunderstandings. These events will be open only to people who identify as women, and we ask the rest of our membership to respect this. Okay, if for some weird reason I was a member of the FemSoc or became a member of their FemSoc, yes, I would respect that rule there. I would not go or try to crash a women-only space. I see no political advantage in doing so. In these women-only sessions, we aim to offer a greater degree of interpersonal support, and these are the only sessions where we guarantee confidentiality. Nothing you say within a woman-only space leaves that space. If members violate the confidentiality policy in women-only spaces, they will not be allowed to return. And if a committee member does so, they will be disciplined and possibly asked to leave their position. However, we also recognize that since one of our aims is to participate in changing the culture of Durham University, now what's so terrible about the culture of Durham University that needs changing? Do they mean that it's less than ideal and they need to change it to something ideal? I'm sure everybody would like to change the culture of Durham University in some way. We all have our own ideas about things. One of our aims is to participate in changing the culture of Durham University. We want to actively engage students of all genders. Instead of saying both sexes, they say all genders. And boy, they're way out there. Therefore, we host a variety of events with different admittance policies. Our general weekly meetings, book and film club, and general socials will be open to members of all genders. You mean both sexes? Come on. Knock it off with that, all genders. As stated above, FemSoc prioritizes the voices and experiences of women, so they're getting rather repetitious here. So it is very important to establish what this means for the men who attend the mixed gender FemSoc events. First, we'd like to state that we are very much aware that the patriarchy can hurt men too, which is why we should all be extremely eager to dismantle it. So this is where it would be very easy for us to get into an argument about whether we should dismantle the patriarchy or not, or whether patriarchy hurts men too or not, and how men are hurt, and we will miss the real point that what is the patriarchy? Do we believe in the patriarchy? This would be an example of arguing within feminism, or within the limitations of feminist theory, and you're just disputing one train of feminist thought against another. It is the concept of the patriarchy altogether that we should be questioning. But since this is a feminist bubble here, a feminist echo chamber, there is simply no leeway, no leverage to question the basic premises which define this particular cultural space. However, there are two key differences to how the patriarchy treats men and women. Now, assuming that you believe in the patriarchy, assuming that you've defined the patriarchy. One, even though the patriarchy can also negatively impact men, its negative impact on women is more severe beyond comparison. All right, whatever you say. Two, even though the patriarchy can also negatively impact men, the patriarchy also awards men social privilege over women, whilst women are hurt by the patriarchy and socially subjugated to men. See how they just keep saying things and repeating things over and over. They seem to think that by virtue of repetition, things become true. That if you say something 10 times, it's a little bit more true than if you say it one time. If you say it 1,000 times, it's way more true. And just keep saying it and it becomes true. But that's not how reality works. If a thing's not true, repeating it over and over and over and over doesn't make it true. And yet these people, they act as if that is what they believe. They seem to think that just saying it over and over makes it true. What's with these people? Secondly, we would like to emphasize this notion of privilege versus oppression. We operate on a non-negotiable, here we go, here's their non-negotiables. On a non-negotiable core belief that men hold social privilege over women in society. Well, if it's non-negotiable, I guess I can't negotiate that. Well, I'm going to postulate my own non-negotiable belief, and that is that I have a non-negotiable right to disagree with their non-negotiable beliefs and to not negotiate with their non-negotiable beliefs. And that is non-negotiable. We operate on a non-negotiable core belief that men hold social privilege over women in society, which results in men receiving preferential treatment, higher status, higher acclaim, and more power in comparison to women. That is why it is unavoidable that someone with lived experience of being a man will have no idea what it's like to have a woman's lived experience. And that is very true. Nick, wouldn't you say so? I would. It is unavoidable that someone with lived experience of being a man will have no idea what it's like to have a woman's lived experience. Anybody with lived experience of being fetal bogan will have no idea what it's like to have Nick Redding's lived experience or James Huff's lived experience or anybody's lived experience. Woman's lived experience, man's lived experience. Yeah, a woman cannot possibly know what a man's lived experience is like. We really are all woefully ignorant about any lived experience other than our own. So what they are telling us here is really not very helpful. It's just piss poor philosophy. Anyway, this informs our first rule of conduct for men in FemSoc spaces. And here we go with the rules, a numbered list. 1. Listen to women's experiences and opinions. Do not talk over women or assume that you can understand a woman's experience better than she herself can. All right. And if she extends the same courtesy to me, well, you know the drill. Aim to participate in the conversation by listening instead of speaking, meaning listen most of the time, speak some of the time. Also, aim to participate by asking questions rather than asserting opinions. Don't mansplain. Men doing this in the past have quite literally deterred women from attending FemSoc or joining in conversation, which we consider unacceptable. Yeah, anytime a man explains something, that's mansplaining, apparently. If you are the only man in a group of women and you are dominating the conversation, ask yourself why. Why do you believe it's more important your voice is heard compared to theirs? Why do you believe that you have something inherently more important to say on women's experiences than women do? Which leads us to the second rule. Check your privilege. If you are a man in a FemSoc space, you will have read the above-mentioned info on our core beliefs, which means you accept that you have privilege over women. So by going to the event, you have, by implication, accepted their belief system. You accept that you have privilege over women. This privilege shapes your life in a positive way, and the lack of it shapes women's lives in a very negative way. The last thing we want to do is replicate this unequal distribution of power in FemSoc spaces. Once you've accepted that you cannot know what it's like to live as a woman unless you listen to women, you must accept that your experiences, opinions, and views are all shaped by your privilege, and it's up to you to check it and make sure you are not steamrolling over women. If women are telling you that something is a thing and you argue with them, don't believe them. Check your privilege and reread point number 1. That brings us to point number 3. Be responsive to being called out. As a man, even if you don't intentionally propagate misogyny and sexism, you still by default benefit from the existence of misogyny and sexism. Therefore, you do not get to decide what is and isn't misogyny, sexism. You got to listen and believe, I guess. That is to be decided by women. So anything that they want to call misogyny or sexism is misogyny and sexism. You don't get to decide. All right? Now, if that's the rules of the FemSoc, that's okay for the FemSoc. If it gets outside of the FemSoc, oh boy, and then we got a problem. So if a woman calls you out on misogynistic, sexist language, behavior, etc., please note that you are expected to stop this behavior or using this language instantly. The only right way to respond to being called out is, "I'm sorry, I did that. I will never do it again." You should not, however, attempt to justify your actions, attempt to excuse them by saying you didn't mean it. Intentionality is really irrelevant. What matters is the result. Well, in other words, their feelings. Or complain that women are allowed to say, do something you aren't. Remember that allyship is not an identity in the same way being oppressed is. Allyship is a process, and allying is something not something you are, which means that just because you call yourself an ally doesn't mean we can't challenge your behavior. We get to decide whether someone is our ally or not based on their actions. Being open and honest when called out can be really difficult, but we aim to be a safe space where these things can be done in the spirit of bettering each other without making it personal. However, if anyone refuses to accept being called out and continues their problematic behavior, they may be asked to stop attending FemSoc events for the sake of the rest of our membership. Point 4. Same as you don't get to decide what is and isn't sexist, you don't get to say what is and isn't feminism. This, again, is to be decided by women. Oh boy, you know, around here we say feminism is what we say it is. But of course they're talking about the rules of the FemSoc, which apply only within the space of the FemSoc. Outside of the FemSoc, these rules do not apply. So fine, if they want to have a club and have their club rules and impose those rules on membership, people upon their membership or anybody attending their events, okay, I'm fine with that. If they start expanding it into the rest of the world, I'm not fine with that. And it seems to me this is exactly what feminism is attempting to do, to expand the rules of the FemSoc and make them the rules for all of humanity. And boy, we got a problem there. Now, back to point number 4. Same as you don't get to decide what is and isn't sexist, you don't get to say what is and isn't feminist. Feminism or feminist. This, again, is to be decided by women. You are just going to have to trust us after centuries of being oppressed by men. Well, if you accept that women have been oppressed by men for centuries, we are capable to identify what needs to change and how best to change it. It's your job to listen to us and to support us. And if you don't agree with women's opinions on a certain issue, see points 2 and 3. 5, don't treat women as a monolith. This simply means that if some women are drawing your attention to something problematic, do not respond with, "But I have X many women friends who don't mind it at all." Don't forget that with every form of oppression, there exists an aspect of internalization, which occurs when members of the oppressed group internalize their oppression to the point where they see nothing wrong with it, think that it's normal and natural, etc. Therefore, it is enough that there are some women who find certain language behavior problematic for you not to do it. Okay, again, this is within the FemSoc. And if that's how they want to have their club, okay, fine. I don't want to be part of their club anyway, so to hell with them. When in doubt, err on the side of caution. If some women have brought something problematic to your attention, don't do it or say it and recognize it as problematic. 6, call out behavior, problematic behavior in other men. As the great saying goes, men who want to be feminists do not need to be given a space in feminism. They need to take the space they have in society and make it feminist. In the spirit of this, do not expect us to provide you with the comfy, cozy, misogyny-free corner that we have backbreakingly carved out for ourselves. It is your job to actively challenge sexism and misogyny when you see or hear it, but as we've mentioned, not by telling off women. That's right, you can never tell off women, ever, ever, for any reason, ever. So who should you tell off? That's easy, other men. Other men, because of course, men are the problem, right? That's feminism. If it is safe to do so and does not pose an immediate risk to your health, this is the single greatest contribution you can bring to the feminist table and what we expect from our men membership. And that's it. That is the end of the rules and regulations telling men how to behave if they want to be part of the FemSoc at Durham University in England. And Durham University has chapters in other English universities all over England, as I understand. Nick, are you there? Hello, Nick. Have we lost Nick? I am not hearing from Nick. And I see that Nick's avatar is not on the screen. For some reason, we have lost Nick.
Oh, well, hopefully he can come back.
Okay, I don't pay much attention to the group chat here. In fact, I almost never look at it, but I see he left a message. It says, "Sorry guys, I'm out. I apologize." Okay, so Nick is not here. Well, anyway, I have just read to you the FemSoc Code of Conduct for Men in Feminist Spaces. They mean FemSoc spaces. I guess they mean all feminist spaces, unless it's some other brand of feminism that wants to play by a different set of rules. I have no problem with these rules. Anybody has a right to start a club and have rules for their club, for members and guests in their club. That's just fine with me. That's A-okay with me. But as I said earlier, the whole endeavor of feminism is to take something very much like the FemSoc Code of Conduct and expand it and generalize it into society and into the world at large. The process of turning the world into a feminist world is very much the process of stretching the boundaries of the FemSoc everywhere on planet Earth. That would be a feminist world. That would be a feminist society. And theoretically, there would be no way out. There would be no exit. Fortunately for us, I can tell you in all confidence, in fact, I would stake my life on it, that feminism is going to collapse here before too much longer. You know, they're not going to get a feminist world. They'll never get a feminist world. It just ain't going to happen. It simply would not be sustainable. So, this is what Adam Frost, the young man who wanted to start a male issue society at the University of Durham, had to face. He had to face up to a wall of people just like this who think this way. Naturally, they gave the thumbs down to his men's issue society because, of course, feminism has all the answers. There is nothing that any group of men would want to get together and talk about that couldn't just as well be talked about by a bunch of feminists or by a bunch of men joining up with a local group of feminists. Because, of course, everything progressive in this world, one way or another, has to march under the banner of feminism. One day, the world will be feminist. But, on the other hand, if the non-feminist sector discovers itself and becomes a political class and becomes an active force in politics, that could change. And here at the Vanguard Report, our endeavor is to promote the political self-awareness of the non-feminist sector. And as the political... Oh, excuse me, someone's trying to call me on Skype here. Okay, got that noise out of my ear. All right, I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, the non-feminist sector, as the non-feminist sector becomes more and more politically aware, it becomes the activated non-feminist sector. And activated just means politically aware. You know what's going on. You understand the nature and the ramifications of the feminist problem. So, one more thing here. Cue number 4. That is from the Telegraph UK, if you want to get up to speed upon Adam Frost and his adventures. A little note on Adam Frost. He is, by his own self-description, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, you read the story here in cue number 4. It sounds like he is kissing up to the feminist establishment, but he tipped his hand in the reader comments, either in this article or another related article. I forget which one it was, but he basically came out and said that he knows what the problem is. He knows what the problem with feminism is, and that he was playing a wolf in sheep's clothing game. He is not the kiss ass that he appears to be, and he made this clear in his own words. But you have to dig through the reader comments. So, yeah, sounds like he's a tricky bastard, which can be a good thing. Next, cue number 5. This is a YouTube video. You have to go there and watch it. Basically, the anti-Gamergate forces, the feminists and the social justice warriors, are trying to take over the narrative again. They realize that they got their ass kicked in the Gamergate affair. And so now they are trying to tell us that gaming is growing up. There's more positive female role models in gaming, and it just came out in the latest E3 convention. And E3, if you don't know, is an electronic entertainment convention, a place where people go to talk about computer games, among other things. It's one of the biggest conventions of that kind in the world, or so I'm told. And at E3, they apparently debuted some new computer games which are full of positive role models. And now the feminists are saying that, hooray, computer gaming is now growing up. Oh boy, it must be because of people like Anita Sarkeesian, huh? In one fell swoop, they want to flush Gamergate down the memory hole and rewrite history. You can see where they're going with this. They got their ass kicked by Gamergate, and now they're trying to pretend it never happened. They're going to ignore Gamergate if they can possibly do so, and drop Gamergate down the memory hole and say that, well, 2015 was a year when computer gaming turned around. Now, if you watch this YouTube, you'll discover that in 2014, they did even better. There were even more positive female characters in computer games released in 2014 than there were in 2015. So actually, it's gotten worse between 2014 and 2015. But, you know, the feminist establishment and the computer gaming media and so on, etc., they're trying to spin it like 2015 was a year when computer gaming started to grow up. Growing up. That's a phrase they're starting to use now. You're going to hear them saying it. Growing up basically means you get somebody to sing our song and play our game. They are growing up. Like if I suddenly decided to become a feminist, that would be a sign that I was growing up. Get it? Do what they want you to do, and then they will allow you to be a grown-up. Otherwise, you're not a grown-up. You're not an adult. Boy, their bag of tricks just goes down into infinity, doesn't it? Sneaky bastards. So that is cue number 5. Go watch that. You know what? I think we're going to wrap it up here. Hour and a half. It was a good show. Nick is gone. That's about everything I had lined up to talk about today. So, contact us at our email address. I think that is cue number 6. If I got that wrong, it's vanguardreport@usa.com. Send your love mail, send your hate mail, send your lukewarm mail, send anything you want to send. Got something interesting to share, send it along. Got interesting news, send it along. You got a brilliant philosophical idea, send it along. vanguardreport@usa.com. So, I think we're going to wind it down now. This has been episode number 54 of the Vanguard Report. I think the audio quality will be acceptable for this episode. So everybody, remember, feminism is what we say it is. Never forget that feminism is what we say it is. And on that note, everybody, have an excellent week, and I'll see you again next week for episode number, what is it, 55 of the Vanguard Report. Until then, feminism is what we say it is. Everybody, have an excellent week, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.